Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Astuti Safia, and now I want to explain about the history of Romanticism. Romanticism is the 19th century movement that developed in Europe in response to the Industrial Revolution and the disillusionment of the Enlightenment value of reason. Romanticism emerged after the 1789, the year of the French Revolution that caused a relevant social change in Europe. Based on the same ideals of liberty, fraternity, and legality, this new movement was born, aiming to highlight the emotions and the irrational world of the artist and of the nature as opposed to the prevalence of reason and rationality during neoclassicism. In England, Romanticism was introduced by the first generation of British artists active in Europe between 1716 and 1718, including James Barrie, Henry Fuseli, and John Hamilton Mortimer, who liked to paint subjects that departed from the rigid decorum and the historical or classical mythology of those years. The influence of some English poets, such as William Blake, and their visionary image led Romantic artists to favor bizarre, pathetic, or extravagant themes. A few years later, the Romanticism were represented by the English painter G.M.W. Turner and John Constable, who excelled in picturesque landscapes and portraying the dynamic, the sublime natural world evokes in the artist. In France, the main early Romantic painters were Eugène Delacroix and Theodore Géricault, who inaugurated the movement in country around 1820 with their paintings of the individual heroism and suffering of the French Revolution. In Germany, the Romantic painters sought for more symbolic and allegorical meanings. The greatest German Romantic artist was Caspar David Friedrichs. Romanticism spread throughout Europe in the 19th century and developed as an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that embraced various arts such as literature, painting, music, and history. Romanticism was also expressed in architecture through the imitation of older architectural styles. In Germany and England, the medieval Gothic architecture was also influenced by the fantasy and style of the movement, and this renewed interest led to the Gothic revival.
Hello everyone, my name is Megali Sabitri Epi. I want to explain the material, the political of Romanticism era. Political beginnings. The style and ideas of the Romantic era were largely influenced by the writing of Enlightenment scholars such as John Locke, Adam Smith, and Voltaire. These writers preached the importance of democracy as well as the evil of monarchy and the importance of the individual. However, much of the Romantic era was also a backlash to the importance of other Enlightenment ideas that seemed to promote totalitarianism. Political effect of Romanticism. The Romantic era started approximately with the French Revolution in 1789 and ended when the Great Reform Bill of 1832 was passed. Because of the principle expressed in the Romantic era, it contributed to many revolutions such as the French Revolution, the Irish Uprising of 1798, the American Revolution. Romanticism started, disgruntled by the oppressive rule of Louis XVI. The French Revolution embraced the Romantic method of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Napoleon rallied the nationalism of the French, a large concept of the Romanticism, and used it to fuel the revolution. Changing face of nationalism. After Napoleon turned France into his personal empire, the nationalism that he had previously used to fuel his revolution turned against him and became part of anti-monarchy sentiments prevalent throughout the Romantic era. Romanticism and classical education. Despite the Romantic era's initial connection to the Enlightenment, as time progressed, Romantic writers started instead to praise the classical societies of Greece and Italy. Writers such as Byron and Shelley.
The term Romanticism refers to this period of cultural shift and generally extends from the late 18th century to the late 19th century. Social culture that occurred in this period of Romance is where spontaneity, imagination, and originality appear as valuable forces through which individuals can connect with universal truth and communicate those truths to others. Appreciation for nature and nature reflects the Romantic belief in spiritual transcendence experienced in the presence of the physical nature. The new laissez-faire economic theory and the onset of the Industrial Revolution result in an increase in the middle class, urban migration, and increasingly poor living conditions for those who left their country houses to work in manufacturing cities.
During the Romantic period, King George III ruled over the whole of England. He is known for his insanity. His rule over England is primarily the reason why so many English voters were able to sympathize with the French. Also, around the time of the French Revolution, the American Revolution started, right under the king's nose. The Americans revolted because of the lack of sympathy and care he showed them. The Revolution led to England's laws on the colonies. These laws confused the king, as he could not grasp the fact that his attitude toward the Americans is what made him lose the colonies. For years after the American Revolution ended, and a year before the French Revolution, in 1788, George III's mental illness got worse, and he became more and more deranged. 23 years later, in 1811, the king would no longer fit to further lead his country, and his son George IV took over.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Isnawati. I will explain about the author of Romanticism era. Poetry literature flourished during this period. The names of poets that can be cited include William Wordsworth (1770 until 1850), Samuel Taylor Coleridge (1772 until 1855), Percy Bysshe Shelley (1792 until 1822), John Keats (1795 until 1821), and Walter Scott (1771 until 1832). Unlike poetry literature, prose literature in this period developed very slowly, although we can still see some prose literary works that should be highlighted. What is interesting in this period is the emergence of prose literary works of non-fiction such as historical works, biographies, literary criticism, books on religion, essays, and so on. Some of the figures that can be presented are Carlos Lamb (1775 until 1834), Thomas de Quincey (1785 until 1859), Walter Scott (1771 until 1832), Jane Austen (1775 until 1817), a prolific female novelist.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Resti Febrianti. I want to explain about the literary work of the era, Romanticism. Romanticism was characteristic by its emphasis on emotion and individualism, as well as glorification of all the past and nature, preferring the medieval rather than the classical. It was partly a reaction to the Industrial Revolution. The aristocratic social and political norms of the Age of Enlightenment and the scientific rationalism of the nature, all components of modernity. It was embodied most strongly in the visual arts, music, and literature, but had a major impact on historiography, education, health, social science, and the nature science. It had significant and complex effect on politics, with Romantic thinkers influencing liberalism, radicalism, comparatism, and nationalism. The movement embraces intense emotion as an authentic source of aesthetic experience, placing new emphasis on such emotion and apprehension, horror and terror, and especially that experience in confronting the new aesthetic category of the sublimity and beauty of nature. It elevated folk art and assigned costume to something noble but also spontaneity as a desirable characteristic, or as in the musical import. In contrast to the realism and classical of the Enlightenment, Romanticism revived medievalism. An element of art and narrative, perceived and authentical medieval in an attempt to escape population growth, early urban sprawl, and individualism.